Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Dezey here with my second hero spotlight on Ozo. If you haven't checked out my Taka video yet, it's going to be right up there somewhere. Now, everyone thinks Ozo is a trash bag. When you pick him, people are going to think you're trolling, or they're going to dodge in hero select, or they're going to go on full tilt at the beginning of the game. But Super Evil Megacorp has given him a lot of love in the last 2 or 3 patches, and even in the upcoming patch 120, he's going to get some more love there. He's got an amazing ability set. He can do a lot of things a lot of people can't. He can bring the damage, and he can also stay alive for a very long time. And I'm going to show you how to do all that right now.
For this video, I am mainly going to be talking about Crystal Power Ozo. All of his modifiers are Crystal Power, and I personally feel that's where he is the strongest. I will touch on briefly on Weapon Power Ozo throughout this video in case you are forced into that situation. Ozo's heroic perk will increase all healing and barriers by 10 to 30% at levels 6, 9, and 12. This perk is very simple and straightforward, but the amount of hero compositions and item builds can be very complex and lead to endless possibilities of Ozo not dying. Right now there are 2 heroes that Ozo synergizes very well with. It is Adagio using his Gift of Fire, and Lyra using her Imperial Sigil. Ozo's A ability, 3-Ring Circus, is a multi-activation ability that has a different interaction on each cast. Each activation deals damage and heals Ozo. The first attack is a conal AoE on the target, the second is a dash through the target, and the third is an AoE attack. But the most important thing is that the ability can crit and triggers basic attack effects per activation. Each cast is an auto attack reset, so weaving auto attacks and 3-Ring Circus together will enhance the effects of the items that you choose to build. While building Crystal Power, I will put this at the lowest priority, only taking it to level 4. However, if I'm building Weapon Power, I will prioritize and overdrive 3-Ring Circus. Ozo's B, Acro Bounce, is his bread and butter. Ozo bounces up to 3 times on just about anything on the map except for the turrets, the third bounce being the strongest. Acro Bounce can be used for so many situations. You can use it to engage, chase, run away, and doing great damage all the while. Due to the very high base damage of the ability, I recommend maxing it first, taking its overdrive. If it's not a turret, you can bounce on it. Once patch 120 is dropped, you can bounce on Kraken once again, and you can also use your allies' gap closers to increase your bounce distance. This does take coordination, but the results are worth the difficulty. Being able to get multiple bounces on an enemy is ideal, but always try to make sure that last bounce hits your main target. Keep in mind the bounces take some time to execute. Ozo is vulnerable to getting focused and bursted down while bouncing. Do not bounce into a team of enemies with full cooldowns. You'll die like I did. One last tip for Acro Bounce is that the splash damage on the third bounce can damage turrets and vein crystals. Ozo's ultimate, Bangarang, is a very fast gap closer that knocks the enemy up and back towards the direction you came from, and it shortly stuns the opponent. Bangarang has very obvious tells, making it very easy to defend against. I always suggest keeping an eye on enemies' stun cooldowns and reflex blocks before I use it. I do not like to use it as an initiation ability, as it can isolate you from your team and get you killed if blocked. Instead, I like to use it as a peel. What is peeling? Now let's ask Ozo's cousin here. He and all monkeys know how to do that very well. When the enemy team dives into your carry, peeling would mean stunning, slowing, or doing some form of crowd control to keep the enemy out of range and keep your carry alive. If the enemy cuts into the backline, use Bangarang as one of the best peeling abilities in the game to keep them safe. Here we have an overextended Ringo that gets caught by the glaive. I use my Bangarang to knock him back and stun him to keep my Ringo alive. Let's look at this metaphorically. Ringo is the banana, glaive is the peel. When the glaive is all up on the Ringo, you need to protect that banana and peel that glaive off. Here the Catherine mercilessly pursues the weakened Arden. I use Bangarang to keep her away and we collapse on her as she is stunned to kill her. Now let's talk about the items. I personally prefer to go Crystal Power Ozo. All of his abilities have crystal modifiers on them. I'll start with a crystal bit and then go for an hourglass at the first shot. From there, my priorities will be on the Eve of Harvest. The lifesteal that you get from it perfectly pairs with Ozo's heroic perk. Next on the list is going to be the Fountain of Renewal. Unless you are carrying, then I would go straight into the Aftershock. Your standard defensive items are the Fountain and the Atlas Pauldron. Until you get tanky, play Ozo like you would an assassin. Don't just stand there and take hits. You will die fast, especially against auto-attack reliant heroes. But once you have enough defense and the Aftershock, feel free to mix in plenty of auto-attacks in your repertoire. Lastly, I will build a broken myth. Ozo will almost always stay alive in a fight long enough to get the full stacks, and then he'll start melting his enemies. In this clip, I am low health and getting chased by a Crystal Power Taka. Because I know he has already used Kaku, and I know I can get multiple bounces on him, I can re-engage and outlast him. I have enough defense, sustain, and damage to do so. For Weapon Power Ozo, I am going to start with a Swift Shooter and Potions. I will prioritize Serpent Mask for lifesteal, and then get Halcyon Chargers. The cooldown and movement speed will help Ozo stick to his enemies. I will then get a Tornado Trigger and a Tyrant's Monocle. The attack speed and crit will enhance 3-Ring Circus's relevance. Of course, standard defensive items are the Fountain and the Atlas. With Weapon Power Ozo, auto attacks and the 3-Ring Circus are Ozo's main strengths. Use Acrobounce only as a gap closer. You would be wasting time in the air if you are not auto attacking. The only time I'm going to use Weapon Power Ozo is if I have a lane Adagio on my team. In this video, I get caught out of position and am very close to dying. I use a Fountain and a few Gifts of Fire from Adagio, and I somehow am able to turn the fight around. I do not have enough energy to use Acrobounce, but that's what probably saved the fight. All I needed to do was auto attack and use 3-Ring Circus. Although I die, I was able to make enough of an impact for my team to win that fight 2-1. Welcome to Dezey's The Jungle Route. Patch 119 has changed how gold is obtained. Previous patches forced roamers to get the Iron Guard contract to gain gold. Now gold is split 100% to the last hitter and 75% to the ally within 14 meters. If there are 3 heroes, the poorest of the 3 will get that 75% gold. The experience share range has also been increased to 14 meters. Hyperleveling is no longer a safe strategy, as it will severely screw over the roamer. Now let's get one thing clear. The roamer or support is not there to be the slave of the jungler. They are there to make sure that the jungler doesn't die. The new gold mechanic makes it so that the roam does not have to be the first hit any longer. Because of the new starting paths to roamer, the sustain that you get from the old contract is no longer there. In the last clip that I showed you, I used the old jungle route method, and by the end of the route, my Lyra was very low health. If I were to be invaded, she would have surely died. In the new jungling method, the jungler is going to tank the back minions, and then the roam would tank the medics. Of course, the junglers would still get the last hits, but both the jungler and the roamer will make it to the jungle shop with nearly full health. The pre-level 6 gank. The mechanic of Acrobounce is the key to ganking. You can use an ally's gap closers to increase your bounce range and get at least 2 bounces with a movement speed bonus. The stickiness of 3-Ring Circus will allow you to ensure that the enemy laner is going to be dead or low health. The ideal solo gank is to make sure that your first and third bounce on Acrobounce hits the laner for massive burst damage. At early levels, this is almost always a kill. The post level 6 gank. Because Bangarang is so easy to predict, just make sure the enemy does not have a reflex block, and you get free kills. But because Acrobounce is so effective, I will almost never waste my ultimate on a gank. And now for the main event, team fighting. All of the following footage is going to be from ranked matches in high tier 7 to low tier 8. Here I am up against a Catherine and a Taka. Catherine is very weak at level 1 and 2. Killing her isn't going to be too difficult, but since my cooldowns are going to be high and Taka is very slippery, I'm going to sit in the bush and wait until I can get that double bounce bonus on Taka for the easy kill. In this clip, Glaive separates the Arden away from me. I use Acrobounce to bounce onto the Glaive and over to my Arden. I didn't activate the third bounce because I would get focused and die. As the Black Feather comes down to help, the enemy is now on the run. I use Acrobounce once again on Catherine and then to the Glaive. I didn't use the third bounce because I needed to stay close to the Glaive. I left the Catherine because I knew my allies would clean up. In this clip, you will notice that I always try to get the double bounce on the enemy. Doing so maximizes your damage output. As Kestrel flees, I use Bangarang to catch up with her, and then I use another double bounce to ensure her death. I want you to keep an eye on my cooldowns. All I need is an Aftershock, and I'll almost always have an ability to use. I get pounded on by the Kestrel, but I use Bangarang to shut her up and bounce her to death. Then I patiently wait for Catherine's shield to run out, and I go in for the triple kill. In this clip, I get very close to dying, but I have an Eve of Harvest, an Aftershock, and a Fountain. Anything I do will grant me health. So instead of running from this OP Vox, I keep on fighting, and we end up getting the kill. This fight starts with Arden's Gauntlet and Ringo ripping up the Vox. I know the knockback on Bangarang from the center of the gauntlet will force the enemy onto the wall for a double stun, but the enemy successfully crucibles the gauntlet. I have to act as a meat shield for the Ringo. My sustain and defense are able to keep both of us alive to get the ace and the Kraken. In this fight, my Ringo gets absolutely obliterated, but by maintaining my double bounce strategy, I optimize my damage throughout the fight, and burst down all of the squishies. I purposely ignore the Taka because he can easily go invisible, so I target the Adagio and wait till Taka is the last one standing. This clip here is going to display Ozo's ability to stick to high mobility targets, like Sky. Her Suri Strike is not long enough to get away from Acrobounce, and her forward barrage can be dodged by Ozo's 3-ring circus. Bangarang, however, can get caught by Sky's abilities. And not everyone knows this, but you can use Bangarang in Lyra's Bright Bulwark. Do not blindly use your abilities. Be patient and wait for the right openings, and you will succeed. The great thing about Ozo is that his kit allows you to adapt to every situation. Here, the pedal is fed and full crystal power with 0 armor. I use my Bangarang on the Vox only to get close enough to the pedal to use my 3-ring circus, and eventually I kill her with a double bounce Acrobounce. When I initiated my Acrobounce, pedal dropped a minion for me to bounce on. You need to be a quick reactor to what you can bounce on for the multi-bounces. In this fight, I use my Acrobounce only to poke, and then I retreat back to my lance. We then collapse on the enemy team, and Adagio channels his Verse of Judgment. The pedal tries to escape Adagio's radius, but I use my Bangarang to knock her back into Judgment. Keep in mind, crowd control effects stop Ozo and his abilities in their tracks. While in Arden's Gauntlet, I would not be able to successfully chase the slippery Vox, so I continue to attack Arden for the sure kill. Thanks for watching my Ozo Hero Spotlight. Stay tuned for more. In the meantime, you can catch me on Twitch at the Don Dezey. Good luck, and I'll see you all on the Halcyon Fold.